Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast. I'm your host tonight, Aaron Quinn, along with my co-host on the road, man, making many moves, always going somewhere, doing something. Greg Thompson, how you doing, my man?
Good, good. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the, 90 interstate heading west towards Toledo, but glad to be on the line with you.
Yeah, dude, I I know you got to watch the game with the Cleveland Bills backers. Is that where you were today, watching the game?
Yeah, it was fun. It was at a place called the Third Spot over on the west side of Cleveland with some guys. If anybody listens to the Nick and Nolan show, those guys and a handful of other folks in the Cleveland area started up the Cleveland Bills backers. There was a huge turnout for it, along with, I guess, a lot of folks that normally are there that went to the game. And we had, I don't know, it seemed like 100 people, but I'm not sure exactly.
Was that
But
a
it was a great
turnout?
time. Really awesome crowd.
What did that turnout increase because they knew you were coming?
Clearly, I
Yeah.
think they put the word out ahead of time. So, we had a separate line for autographs and selfies, but we tried to keep it at a minimum.
Sure, sure. That's one thing I've never done though is go to a Backers bar. There was a bar I used to in Maine go to, and there was like three of us that were Bills fans that would just meet up there. There was actually a Backers bar somewhere a little further south, but I've never actually caught a game at a official Bills Backers bar. So that's a pretty cool thing. Is that your first one at a Bills Backers?
No, well, because of traveling so much for work, I've actually done quite a few. So I've been able to do Atlanta, Dallas, New York, and now Cleveland. I've seen some awesome pictures from others around the country, so I'd like to do more. But yeah, with traveling so much for work, I've actually got to do a handful. Today was a great one.
That's awesome, man. I'm going to have to put that on my bucket list and get to it at some point here. But we got a game to talk about. I was at the game, so I got to watch live. You might hear it a little bit of my voice because I was ripping my vocal cords apart on third downs, doing my part, my one of 11, well, one of 12, I guess, not one of 11. Doing my part. So this show is going to be a little bit different because usually we're both watching the game at our home, taking notes, both kind of watching in different atmospheres. It's a lot different if you haven't been live. For people that go there live, it's a lot different to watch. It's, Greg often says you like watching it better on the TV, and a lot of the times I agree with you because you don't get to see a lot of the stuff. So when I was leaving the stadium, I was kind of on Twitter, and some of the plays that people were complaining about and talking about, I didn't get a good view of it while I was live. So some of that stuff we won't probably touch on, or if you got to see it, maybe we can get your opinion on it. But so it'll be a little bit of a different show than we're used to here for the post-game show, but a fun one nonetheless. Lots to talk about. A 16-10 loss to the New England Patriots. And honestly, Greg, outside of how it really started out and it was kind of a wonky game in the start of it, it really ended basically how we talked about and how Mark Schofield talked about when he came on, which would be the best kind of thing where the Bills have a chance in the fourth quarter to win the game. And whether or not they won the game, we kind of conceded that didn't necessarily matter as much, but having that chance against one of the best teams in the league. Now that you've had a couple hours here to drive around, digest this loss, how do you feel overall in the overall sense of this game? Where's your head at?
It's tough, because, like I said, you pointed out, all three of us predicted that. I predicted 17-13. This is that kind of game that I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be ugly. I thought we had two of the probably top 3 or 4 defenses in the NFL, and we absolutely did. We saw those on display. And I think it's, on one hand, really reassuring to see that, hey, we can hang with these guys, and this defense is going to let us be in absolutely any game. That anytime that we're in a game, they're going to let us be competitive. And it's also really frustrating to see that, hey, we were in this game, and if we don't have 4 turnovers and some, I don't think the referees did us any favors today, but that's not the reason we lost. But if, just a handful of those things, heck, I know Josh was the reason for a lot of those turnovers, but I feel like if he was in the game at the end of the game, maybe something happens there. So that's, on one hand, really reassuring that we can hang with the best team in the league. And then on the other hand, really frustrating that I feel like we let one get away, that our defense put up a absolutely pristine performance, and that, you feel like you should cash in when those happen.
Yeah, I'm with you a little bit here because it was sloppy to begin with, and it felt like, I told you this really before we went on air, in the stadium, it really felt like we were maybe about to witness another Patriots blowout, the way they started there with the blocked punt for a touchdown. And they had one drive where they really just moved the ball on us and scored pretty easily. But really after that, it was an incredible defensive performance, probably one that I've never seen live. The way that this defense buckled down. You keep Tom Brady 18 for 39, 150 yards and an interception, no touchdowns. You typically will win this football game. Unfortunately, the offense really couldn't get anything going. They came out in the third quarter. It was actually a really weird game, right? Because all season, the third quarter, the offense has struggled. This season, or this game, they come out in the third quarter and they look the best they did the entire game. So they did something right there, and then we lost Josh Allen. And you're right. In my drive home, I was going through all the shoulda, woulda, couldas that could possibly go wrong, but you can't really do that because any of those things change every other outcome, right? The game is how it is, and yeah, maybe they should have taken the 3 on 4th and 1, but you know what? If he doesn't take the 3, or if he does take the 3, then everyone's going to say, oh, you should have been playing for the win in that position. So really, hindsight always wins out. We talk about that a lot here. Hindsight always wins out. You're going to have some shoulda, woulda, couldas in a close, tight game like this. But let's talk about what we talk about a lot here on the show, which is the toxic differential. We were kind of talking about before. I don't have the exact numbers. This is just going off of Greg's beautiful brain in his memory and us kind of talking it out. We had it at the Pats 9 to Buffalo 7, and that's kind of typical of a game that's this close. And it didn't really feel like that, though, live at the game. It felt like the Bills' toxic differential was much higher because I think our toxic plays led to points and led to more of the big plays that really ended up being the difference in this game. What did you take out of that kind of a sloppy performance, really by both teams, but the sloppy performance and then them winning the toxic differential?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's honestly not much different than the Jets game. So, you're talking about where their toxic differential is all turnovers, literally almost every single bit of it. They only had 2 offensive plays of more than 20 yards. They had another one on a turnover on a penalty. There was a third offensive play that accounted for more than 20 yards, and all the rest of them were either direct turnovers, turnover on downs, or the block punt back for a touchdown. So they were all big plays where we gave up the ball for it, and the Bills were the opposite. We had 1 turnover and 6 explosive offensive plays, and that's just surprising to see it that way. But it was very similar to what we saw in the Jets game, where it was all turnovers on one side, some big plays on our side. We did get some chunk plays, and then, again, I went back and forth with a bunch of fans after the game, and that we'll get into it when we get to his section here. But this was a brutal game from Josh Allen, and I wish that we had him on the field at the end of the game and feel like he could have won it for us. And that's kind of what this roller coaster is.
Yeah, no, let's talk about that a little bit right now because I think that this is going to be the story all week is the hit on Josh Allen and whether or not he's going to be in concussion protocol. Well, he is in the protocol, how long he's going to take to get out of it. As soon as I saw that come across my phone while I was at the game, I just assumed that he'll be out for a week. So there's a lot of implications on that. But I'm with you on that I felt like if Josh Allen was in the fourth quarter, that makes it a ball game. But at the same time, primarily up until the third quarter, he had a pretty sloppy game. He was pulling it out, and we've seen him in the fourth quarter make great plays and lead this team. But the Pats kind of had his number and weren't allowing him really to get out of the pocket. He was flustered the entire game up until that one drive in the third quarter. So, again, the coulda, woulda, shoulda stuff is hard to determine because actually I liked a lot of what I saw from Matt Barkley when he came in. Outside of that final drive that he had, he was getting the ball to guys better than Allen was for the most part of the game. He was hitting guys underneath, getting them catchable balls. He had a few bad ones. He had some that hit the dirt, things like that. But he was doing some different things that just Josh Allen still struggles to do. So I don't know which really one ended up putting him in a better position. Obviously, it's something that we can debate, and you'd like to think it's Allen because he's our star quarterback and he's done it before. But I don't know if we can live on that kind of shoulda, woulda, coulda with that scenario in this game. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, it's tough. I like the fact that we have an above-average backup quarterback. I like the fact that we have that as a fallback plan, but that's what he is, and that there's further limitations. You and I talked a lot leading up to the season that we went from terrible to average in a bunch of places. We went from a terrible offensive line to an average offensive line. We went from terrible receivers to average receivers. We added and got ourselves up to par in several categories. That's not a situation that Matt Barkley is going to thrive. If you want to take Matt Barkley and give him, Sean McVay in his ear and that Rams offense around him, I bet he could look pretty solid. But he's not the guy who's going to lift an average unit and make them special. Now, can he keep us in rhythm? Can he, not lose the game for us? I think you saw that. He didn't make any boneheaded turnovers. He had 2 turnovers that were both on kind of tip balls and things that weren't necessarily directly his fault. But he also, I think made 1 or 2 nice plays that were above average. I think he scrambled. I think the defense knew what was there. With Allen, it was, going up against the best defensive mind in NFL history with one of his most talented defensive units ever, and he laid that out to be a perfect game plan, and that Josh fell right into it and played probably his worst game since the injury last year. He had a couple pretty terrible ones with Green Bay and some of the other games last year early on, and this is probably his worst game since then. And that, we've said a lot of times, this is going to be the Josh Allen roller coaster. He's never going to be that guy who's perfect, makes 0 bad plays. You just need to bank on him making more good plays than bad plays, and he didn't do that today. He let us down today, but I do think there were some other gaps, and we'll get to that in the rest of the offensive output, but I don't think he was the only offensive player that played poorly today.
Well, and here's the other thing, man. When you win, it kind of doesn't matter as much. I don't know that they're all talking about in New England and nationally how poorly Brady played today. And I think when you put them up against each other, both going up against probably 2 of the top 5 defenses in the league when everything shakes out at the end of the year, both quarterbacks performed poorly. Just one of them won and really got a lot of help from his special teams in order to do that. So winning changes a lot of that. If the Bills pull this game, I don't know that we're going to be nitpicking Josh Allen's first half performance in the way that we will probably the rest of this week. I heard people kind of hoping that Mac Barkley would come in the third quarter anyway at the stadium, which I thought that was a little bit kind of over the top. I think Josh Allen needs these moments against these types of defenses in a big game with a little bit of hype to really grow. And he really didn't do well. And I thought we saw him come out in the third quarter and we saw some signs of life. And I think that is the kind of growing that you want in a second-year quarterback, even though it was ugly and we ended up losing the game ultimately. And unfortunately, we ended up losing him to a concussion. You don't want that part of it. But I thought that the maturation that was occurring during the game was big for him to be able to put that behind him, that first half behind him, and come out in the third quarter and lead his team down and score. I thought was huge. And Brady only had one of those drives himself. So he went toe-to-toe, with the best quarterback in the world to ever do it, both against top defenses, and they about performed the same. Josh had a couple wonky throws that we'd like to have back, but ultimately the 2 quarterbacks, neither one really stood out from each other today.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference was you saw how often, and this was very often, that Tom Brady was perfectly fine giving up, and that he was fine just throwing the ball in the dirt, throwing it away, which several times were on third downs where he was just giving it up, and that's basically a turnover in itself. He wasn't trying to convert. He was just saying, hey, I'll live to fight another day, and that's some of the maturation that's going to come from Josh. But that transition that they made the halftime adjustments and came out and scored the first touchdown that defense has given up all season. That's the first time someone scored an offensive touchdown on the Patriots all year, and he was leading them on a drive to do it again when he got hurt. I think that is a step forward. It doesn't excuse the fact that he was pitiful in the first half and played horrible and made another boneheaded throw in the second half. But again, that is what he is. You're hoping that improves down the line. You still want him in there because the upside is so much higher than so many other guys.
I think we're going to have time here on Twitter and everybody, we're going to nitpick Josh Allen the rest of this week. And obviously it's going to be a huge topic about his health and going into the Titans game and where he stands there. So I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the position all throughout the week here and in our Wednesday Titans preview show. I want to move over to the running backs a little bit right now because I thought Frank Gore was playing obviously his best game as a Bill. And I really felt while I was at the game that the offense was only really running when Frank Gore got going. And then kind of after they got that touchdown drive, they really just pulled away from him. What did you see on TV that kind of made them pull away from Frank Gore. Obviously, TJ Yeldon was a little bit more productive in the passing game. I don't know. It just seemed like I wanted to see a little bit more Frank Gore because as he was going, the offense was going.
Oh, it made me crazy. We had 2 different drives where Gore was gashing him, and then we threw the ball in 3 straight plays for 3 incompletions and had to punt. And that, I get it. It's hard. It's like anything else. Everything is easy in hindsight. Everything is easy, to nitpick after the fact. But it certainly seemed like we could have gotten him more than 17 carries. I didn't mind giving a drive here or there to TJ Yeldon because, one, I'm not sure if any fans are aware, Frank Gore is 36.
What?
So that might be new news to some people. So, I get the idea that you can't just keep giving him the ball every single play. But there were a couple times where I thought we could have fed him a little bit more. I do think this was by far TJ Yeldon's best game. I thought he really played well, specifically in the passing game, and really stood out on several plays and showed that he can be a viable weapon and hopefully dialed some people back. There are a lot of people asking for him to be cut to bring in Marcus Murphy. And I'll say that there were 3 blitz pickups that I saw TJ Yeldon make that Marcus Murphy could never make. So there are reasons that he's on today, but the running game was fantastic.
Yeah, I lost you a little bit there at the end, but if I didn't see anybody calling for Marcus Murphy, but I must have had that muted on Twitter or something, because if I didn't have it muted, I'm going to mute it now. No, I thought TJ Yeldon played really well, and I think that using him in the passing game actually really benefited the offense quite a bit. But I agree with you. I think there was probably a way we're maybe nitpicking a little bit, but he only had the 17 carries. I think Frank Gore could have easily gone 20 plus in this game, and it maybe not would have been the total difference. But I think you could have gotten to field goal range a couple more times where you're kind of hovering around that 40, 45, and then Allen takes a sack or whatever it is and kind of just keeps him out of field goal range. Gore was having the kind of game where when you get around the 40, you maybe get him the ball a couple more times and he gets into field goal range. And really that is all the difference in a game like this, is the opportunities to get field goals. So before we get into field goals and special teams talk, which we're probably going to talk about that maybe a little bit longer than we should or won't really want to, let's talk about the wide receivers, because obviously they struggled in the beginning of the game because Josh Allen just wasn't hitting anybody. I mean, all those little outs and stuff that we saw him doing really well in preseason and really even in the first couple of games here, he was just missing by a mile. It was the Josh Allen that all the draft nicks warned us about. And I'm sure this week on Twitter, you're going to get all the Josh Allen haters showing clips of him just totally inaccurate hitting and not being able to hit guys on 2 to 3 yards out in the flats. I think that made the entire group suffer as a whole. But at the end of the day, there was some nice production as they got going in the third quarter. What did you see out of that group as a whole? And obviously, I think you probably are going to want to talk about Zay Jones. So I hand the floor over to you.
Yeah, I don't think it was our best game as a wideout unit. I don't think that Josh helped him early. I think he had a lot of adrenaline pumping. He missed a lot of nice, quick little outs that they were trying to get him into a rhythm that, those were on him. But later on, we saw more drops than we've seen in a while. I think it was from almost every receiver that was out there. Several of the interceptions were not great throws. They were not throws that Josh Allen should have made. The interception was on him. This is not to excuse him. But there were several of them where he could have fought back, specifically twice with Zay Jones, where once for Barkley's interception and one for Josh Allen, where he could have fought back towards the ball and become a defender to at least knock it down, and just kind of sat there and waited for the ball to get there. And it was hard to guess in real time, can you just pivot and move back towards the ball that quickly? But there was no effort to do that, and it looked really poor the way that it was shown. So I'm curious to see when we get to break down the film, how real that was, or maybe we're being unfair to what he was doing. But I will say, from a broadcast angle and the replays that they showed, it looked really bad for Zay on a couple of those where it looked like he could have made a better effort to do that. So it's tough. I do think that there were some tough throws. There was one that, went off of Cole Beasley's feet. That was a Matt Barkley throw that I think some fans thought was a drop, and that would have been a tough catch. There were several of them where, I do think John Brown, made some nice tough catches, specifically that one down the sideline from Barkley where, Gilmore had interfered with him and he held back the one arm and basically cradled it one-handed. So there were some nice plays here and there, but overall probably a net negative from the receiving core from the contributions that we did see.
Yeah, nothing really blew me away. Obviously, on that first third quarter drive where they scored, I love the slant over the middle to John Brown. It's worked all year. I'd like to see a little bit more of that in this game. He only got the 5 catches for 69 yards. I really want to see John Brown kind of creeping into that 8-9 catches a game because I think he can do that consistently and hovering around 100 yards. I think that he can be that guy in this offense, and it just seemed like they just couldn't get him the ball. But you're going to struggle to do that, obviously, when you're turning over the ball in the first half and you're struggling to stay on the field. One guy that kind of stood out to me, and it was really from just really one catch, and it was, again, now it's his second week in a row, is Dawson Knox. And he made maybe the most grown man catch I've seen a Bills tight end make in a long time, where he just went up, totally covered, grabbed the ball out of the air, came down with it for a first down. He only had 3 catches for 58 yards, averaged 19.3 a catch. I would like to see him get more targets because he does catch the ball in traffic. He does go up and catch the ball when he's covered. Obviously, he's had some drops and he still has some refining to do. But as he progresses and ascends into his rookie year here, I'd like to work him to get more touches because there aren't – like Cole Beasley's not a guy that's going to just go up and fight for a ball, right? He's going to be open and he's going to get it. John Brown can do that. But outside of that, we don't have those guys on this team. And I think that Knox gives you that ability – on those third and medium, third and longs, where if nothing's really open, you can kind of force him the ball and he might be able to fight off that guy for the one-on-one. The Bills just don't have those guys. And I got to rewatch the Zay Jones play because I really missed it being live. But he's never been that guy either to come back and fight for the ball. That's just not who he is. So I believe everybody that's saying that. That's just not who he is. What did you see out of Dawson Knox? And do they need to start feeding him here as Tyler Kroft also is getting healthy in the background?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he made a positive contribution where he could. I would have liked to have seen more targets. And I actually did see 2 other plays where you could tell he was the designed first read on the play. There was one where they motioned Gore out wide left and had both Gore and DeMarco out left outside of Knox, who was in kind of I think Eric calls it a nub set, where it's kind of like a little wing slot just off of the tackle. And they had him there lined up with a linebacker, and they were running him up the seam. And that was one of the plays where they got pressure. And you could see Josh looking at him and then had to bail out because he was getting pressured like he did over and over again. And there was another play where you could tell he was there and was the right read and just couldn't get the ball out because of pressure. So there was a lot of plays where, I think that we saw Lee Smith on the field a lot because we needed him to block. And I'd love to get into a set where we trust our offensive line more and can use Dawson Knox for what seems to be more potential than we even anticipated. So I'd love to find a way to get him more into the offensive game plan. And there was a couple plays where it seemed like they were going to try today, but when he gets the ball, he does positive things.
Yeah, no, and that's great, especially when your offense is struggling, obviously, the way they were today. And we'll have some time to nitpick the offense, and I'm actually really looking forward this week to Nate and Eric's breakdown in the film session. And if they continue to break down Josh Allen here this week, I'm really interested to see some of the stuff the offense was doing. And I'm going to keep an eye on the offensive line because while I was at the game, it's hard for me to pinpoint who is issues on the offensive line, but I think that led to a lot of the issues that we were seeing. Josh Allen just really was never comfortable at any point until that one drive in the third quarter where he seemed like he had a lot of time and a nice clean pocket, but really for most of the game, it seemed like somebody was failing along the offensive line at any given point. I don't know if that was more of a product of, like Mark talked about this week, of the defense and that amoeba and moving guys around and finding your weakness and kind of pinning on that weakness. Or if it was just a rough day for the offensive line as a whole. But I felt like a lot of the issues, and this was just obviously a feeling. I had not the best angle to watch this as far as analyzing the game, but it felt like a lot of the issues for this offense really started there. And I'm starting to get worried that there was a lot of hype going into the season about this offensive line being a unit that was going to be so much better than it was. And it still is a lot better than they have been last year. But I think that they may be on the more below side of average than maybe we originally thought. I'd love for you to prove me wrong and say that, no, you're totally crazy. They look fine.
do think that there's an important balance to how we do this, and that running game was, and how many holes they opened up for Rancor. So it's fair to be able to make people.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit there, bud. You there?
In the past,
Greg,
they
I'm
were
losing.
terrible. I thought.
Hey, buddy, I'm losing you there.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. All right, go.
All right. You got me?
Yep.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Can you hear anything?
Hello, hello.
You can't hear me.
Offensive line blocking.
All right, keep talking.
I can hear you. Yes.
Yep, keep talking.
All right. Okay. So I do think that it's fair to balance it out that the offensive line did open up holes, and I think we do have a large road grading, mauling offensive line for run blocking who are really poor in their pass sets today. And I think that it's tough to be able to balance that out and to keep Josh upright when they're getting, Cody Ford just got toasted on some speed side, on internal moves and being able to just do some of those kind of tackle games that they did inside, giving up pressure on every single play. Half the time Josh was getting pressure, the other time I couldn't blame him for assuming it was coming and that we were going to get pressure for it. So it was just really hard to be able to get anything going when they were doing that. So I will say they did open up a lot of holes in the run game, but the pass blocking was really, really poor.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of been the MO of this unit so far. And I think they are built for the ground attack, and that's fine if we stick to it a little bit more. So all stuff that we'll kind of break down throughout the week. Hard to really judge watching the game live. So I try not to be too critical of the offensive line after watching it live or watching it on the broadcast view until we really get to look at what was going on. I want to flip it over to the defense here because the interesting thing to me about this defense is if you were a casual fan just watching this game, you would say, wow, that defense played really well. But if you look at the box score, nothing stands out to you, really. Obviously, Tremaine Edmonds has his 7 tackles, leads the team in tackles, but there's really nothing else. There's the 1 interception from Micah Hyde, but Tom Brady barely got hit today. Maybe he got touched once or twice. Really not a lot of pressure, but this may have been one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen from a Bills unit. They really dominated this game. And I think it speaks to the fact that you don't see a lot of the box score stuff or that it doesn't necessarily look flashy or big time turnover plays that you see around the league. Is it speaks to that maybe this defense is more about the unit than it is about the individuals. And as a unit, they are just really pristine. They play clean football, and they're going to force you to make mistakes and force you to punt the ball really all the time. And they're not going to allow you to get in the red zone very often. And I think that might be better than having a stat sheet filled with, we got 5 sacks and 2 interceptions, but they scored a bunch of points. You get a lot of big plays, but you give up big plays. They really aren't giving up much. Is this one of the best defensive units you've ever witnessed as a Bills fan?
And the Patriots offense to 224 total, and that came on 2 drives. And to be able to be in that situation where you're forcing 9 punts and 7 3, I think that it's an incredible. Do you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I think it was an incredible performance overall. I thought that it was just phenomenal to be able to show that much discipline, to be able to stay in front tackles virtually the whole time, being able to consistently, stay in your gap, follow your assignment, and play what can be boring when Brady's getting the ball out of his hands that quickly or throwing it away so often, but continuing to stay disciplined and on your assignment. It was just unbelievable how consistently they were making the play, and being able to get that offense off the field is just.
Yeah, I think it's a super incredible feat, and I am very excited. Maybe the thing that gets me the most excited about this week is all those Tremaine Edmonds haters that people were claiming they were watching the film and still grading him poorly. We had him as our disgruntled, which I'll admit, when you watch the game live and you don't get a chance to analyze it, sometimes you just react to what you think you see. But today, I don't think that anybody could argue that Tremaine Edmonds wasn't one of the best players on the field. today, in my opinion. I think that he was all over the ball. The lack of running game was a lot to do with him and Milano. They were just flying to the ball. They couldn't get on the edge on us. I loved what I saw out of the young guy, our young captain, and Tremaine Edmonds. Kind of who stood out to you on the defensive side of the ball?
I think that's a great one, and I think that you pointed out, Eric really helped us kind of see in the film breakdown that it wasn't what we initially thought were some negative plays. There was really him doing his job, and that, being able to go through there. And I thought you saw the combination of that today with Tremaine Edmonds doing his job and multiple flash plays. He almost got a pick six there at the end of the game where he got the ball, got his hands on the ball, and had a really critical pass breakup that it was on him really hot, but being able to go there. Micah Hyde was phenomenal. Again, being able to really bait Brady into that interception down in the end zone really stood out. You saw more flash plays from Jordan Poyer, and I thought a really sound tackling game from both Levi Wallace and Tre'Davious White, which is tough. For as many little, bubble screens and short tunnel screens that they run, getting the ball out to their receivers quickly, I think that they really shut those down quickly and did a nice job. So just a great all-around effort across the board. Ed Oliver almost got his first career sack on Brady and did hit him the one time, but beyond that, I think Brady was clean the rest of the day.
Yeah, and our boy Daryl Johnson got real close on him one time too. And if he was just there a second, that's a strip sack that Daryl Johnson would have had on him. And you saw Jerry Hughes saw it as he was coming onto the field, and he was telling him, he was going, "Oh, you were so close, so close." So both those guys making impacts and positive impacts for this team. But you mentioned the tackling, and all season it stood out to me. I think that this might be one of the best tackling teams in the league. They're just, guys are not getting anything. You might give up a reception, but nobody's going anywhere afterwards. I think maybe the biggest after the catch this year was the pick play that got challenged here in this game, and Josh Gordon took it for like another additional 20 yards, but that's because the defender got tripped, not because he wasn't able to get tackled. But the tackling's been fantastic, and if you, in this league, you're going to give up plays, you're going to give up receptions, but if you can tackle the guy and not allow him to go anywhere, you're going to be consistently in games like this and consistently make teams punt. So that's what we're seeing out of this defense. I think this probably some fans want to see more flashy plays, and I don't know if we're going to really get that with this unit. I think it'll come as more balls get tipped and things like that, but I think it's really just a pristine unit, and they're going to play clean defense and really force you to try to move the ball on them. And I'll take our defense really up against anybody in this league, especially after seeing them do it against Tom Brady. We're going to talk about special teams a little bit more than we normally do. I feel super frustrated, and you kind of know a lot more about the punt game and special teams than I do. But as a casual fan of this, and having gone through the Danny Crossman years of constant special teams penalties, constant special teams mistakes, in a big game like this where you have all this hype, for a lot of the problems in this game to really fall back on special teams. Obviously, the offense had their issues in the first half, but we could have lived through those offensive issues if the special teams played clean, or even half as clean as they played. But there really was mistakes across every part of the special teams today, whether it be penalties, missed field goal, blocked kick, everything went poorly. There were some highlights on the special teams too, but as far as mistakes go, every part of that unit made a mistake. I think it's totally unacceptable. What's going on? Is it just a new coach, new scheme, and guys aren't figuring things out, or was it just kind of a conundrum today that all these mistakes happened?
Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on it, and I think that a piece of it is how many new pieces there are and a first-time coordinator, and I'd like to think that's going to grow over time. This is only the fourth game that Farwell's ever been a special teams coordinator, but like I said, we started with the offensive line, giving a couple of positives. There were a couple where Bajorquez had some punts with enough hang time and in the right position that Saran Neal got under them at the 5-yard line and fair caught 2 of them. That's really impressive. That's a really good job. But there was also a play where the gunner didn't come in. They had 5 guys on the right side of the line with only 3 defenders, and we let 2 guys come through untouched and blocked it for a touchdown. And in case you didn't notice, we lost 16-10. So not having that block punt back for a touchdown would have been awful helpful. And just that kind of, you can't have those critical mistakes. I get it that, yes, Bajorquez shanked another punt, and that was terrible. Had some other inconsistent ones. I would like for Hauschka to make every kick. A 48-yarder is not a gimme, so I'm not terribly concerned there, but it would have been nice for him to make it. But just not getting lined up and letting a free rusher come untouched to block a punt back for a touchdown. And I have to assume that they got a read on that from a film standpoint to know that if they started out on the gunner and then shifted in mid-play, that we wouldn't bring the gunner in, and must have got a read on that somehow. And that's just, Belichick beating us and being one step ahead on that. That's infuriating to see that we let them outsmart us into a free touchdown.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk. I heard some on the radio and even some in the stands that Borges should have called for a fake himself and thrown it to that guy. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that it just works like that, where the punter just calls a fake and throws it to that guy. I think what was supposed to happen was the gunner was supposed to come in as extra added protection to make up for the guys that are coming in with the all-out punt block. Any special teams aces out there can come to my Twitter and tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I don't think that play was supposed to say, okay, well, the guy's wide open over there. Let's have Borges throw him the ball and see what happens. I think that we're supposed to bring the protection in. Somebody missed something somewhere, and I'm sure that is not going to be a fun film study throughout this week here for that special teams unit, and I'm sure Sean McDermott's going to be in there, sitting in there, yelling at those guys with that, because it really was the difference in the game, because we only gave up 9 points to a Tom Brady-led offense, and to have a play like that is just so disheartening, and it really ended up being too much to overcome for this team, because the offense just could not do what a lot of the offenses have struggled to do this year, which is score on the New England Patriots enough to overcome a huge turnover like that. So special teams, in my opinion, is on notice. It's been weeks now of mistakes. I think the Giants game could have gotten broken open with that Sear Neal saving that touchdown against the Bengals. Obviously, a kickoff return, I think it was, came back from kind of it definitely was a hold, but those holds happen pretty much all the time. Could have easily gone the other way. So special teams, to me, big time on notice. I'm keeping my eye on it, and I really hope that we start to correct things going forward, because that is, to me, one of those things we've seen it throughout the years, where you could have a really good defense and even you can have a moderate offense. But if your special teams is making these kinds of mistakes, it's going to make it really hard on your team to win games. You really have to try to play as clean as possible in all three phases. And I find special teams penalties and turnovers to be extra annoying when you're playing, because they don't get that many snaps, and you just expect them to kind of come in and do their jobs. Do you think special teams is on notice? I'm not saying anybody getting fired, but just we need to expect better, and I don't know how to get that, but I think that Sean McDermott's putting them on notice this week.
100%. I will say, Andre Roberts is a feisty returner. I like him.
Yeah.
He had a couple of really nice returns, so he's a positive piece. I think Saran Neal is a really good gunner. So I think we've got a couple of pieces that aren't bad. But obviously, as an overall unit, from a discipline standpoint, we've had less penalties than last year, but still more than I'd like. And obviously, again, just some of the basics of that, of lining up and not being able to do that. Consistency of Corey Bojorquez is tough. He had a good first two games. I just had to give him a pass last week that the wind was so bad that it really hurt him. He was bad again this week, and I think they have to be in the market for a punter. I'm not saying they need to pull the trigger now, right, but if he has another rough week in Tennessee, I think you have to use that bye week to bring in a new guy.
Yeah, bringing lots of guys, and just everybody's kicking in Buffalo until they find one. A subject that we really don't talk about a lot, because this year it's actually been pretty good, but something I want to touch on here before we get into how we wrap up this show. I heard a lot of talk and stuff about time management, timeouts, challenges, things like that. And I think that there was some issues in this game, but I don't know. I heard people on the radio calling in talking about how they took timeouts, and I have a tough time getting upset about if Josh Allen sees something that the defense is doing and they don't feel comfortable running the play that they've got in it. I'm okay with him taking a timeout and saying, hey, we need to take a look at this. That's why he's a captain. That's why he's the leader of your offense, stuff like that. A couple of the challenges, though, I don't know what the process is for the Bills. So I'm not going to speak to what Sean McDermott's seeing or what he's being told. But a couple of those challenges, kind of even in the stands, it felt like, man, that doesn't seem like something that you're really going to get an official to overturn and go your way. maybe you shouldn't throw that. And it feels like maybe somebody should be there in his ear to say, hey, man, I agree with you that this play, that especially I'm speaking to that pick play specifically, we agree with you that's a pick play. You're going to have a really hard time to get an NFL official to overturn that play as an illegal play, or that shouldn't exist, because then you're talking about something like intent. And I know it's a split-second decision, but I feel like in a tight game, in a 16-10 game, those decisions are amplified. What about time management challenges did you see, and did any of it bother you today?
There was a couple pieces. I do give guys a pass. If you're getting us out of a bad play and we don't have the right read or alignment there, that's not a bad timeout. And Brady has done a couple of those as well. We had a couple that we didn't get ourselves out of the huddle in time to get to the line and to get lined up. And that's organization and discipline, and just needing to know that, hey, if you're not getting the call in your ear fast enough, to get into the line and call the play yourself. That's that's an acceptable lack of organization. So I think we had two of those that frustrated me.
There's one of those was a special teams one. Jordan Poyer was just going around with his hands up, not knowing what to do. I don't know why he was in on teams for that one, but kind of the same thing. We ended up having to waste the timeout because special teams just couldn't get lined up.
Yeah, and then on the challenges, I think that's a little bit tougher, because I think that, again, the spirit of where McDermott was, I think he was right on both of them. I do think that James White's forward progress was stopped, and the whistle should have been blown and the play was over, but I think that's impossible to overturn, and you just have to know the system well enough to know that you're not going to win that.
Right.
Separately, I do think that there's a scenario where if there was any contact from Lacoste coming across the middle on that play, they would have given him defensive pass interference. There was some weird matrix stuff where they never physically made contact, and I think that made it hard to overturn. But I do think that he was right in spirit in both of them, but you're right that he has to have someone in his ear from an analytics standpoint or from a probability standpoint, letting him know whether you're going to be able to win those, and that, maybe we should have held on to it there. So it's hard in the spirit, in the heat of the moment, when I do think he was right on both of them, not to want to throw the flag there and support your guys. But that's something he needs to continue to improve on. And that was the first time he's challenged any plays all this year, and he missed the first two.
Yeah, and it's just tough. And I don't know that it ended up impacting the later stages of the game, but I think I didn't keep good track of the score, but I want to say there was maybe 12, 13 minutes where we didn't have any timeouts and we didn't have any challenges in a 16-10 game. And those are the types of things where if you really needed them, you look pretty stupid come Monday if you needed those two things that are supposed to be in your toolbox late in the game and you don't have them. So I don't think they impacted this game, but kind of something to keep an eye on, maybe how we use challenges. I know there's been complaints in the past about McDermott using challenges. Like you said, he's kind of kept that flag in his pocket so far this year. So we'll have to see how it goes in the future. But I agree that I think he was right and justified in wanting to challenge those plays. But yeah, maybe somebody's got to be up there that just knows how the league's calling some of the stuff and where they're reviewing and what specifically they're looking for in reviews. Because when I saw both of them, I agree. I agree with you, Sean, but you can't overturn either one of those. So something to keep an eye on. Let's get right into the disgruntled here and wrap this show up for people, because I know people are probably sick of hearing us. Let's start with your gruntled. Let's go on a positive note. For you, who was your gruntled player today?
I am going to give it to Tremaine Edmonds, part as my mea culpa of maybe overreacting a little bit last week. But really, you could go to the entire defense, all 11 players. Unbelievable. You hold the greatest quarterback of first performances of all time. Everybody deserves a game ball there. So I'll have Tremaine Edmonds as the representative of that, but it's the whole defense, and they all deserve it.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I thought about doing something kind of similar, and really Leslie Frazier, since we've given him out to coaches in the past, because to go up against Tom Brady and Belichick and McDaniels and hold them in check, he deserves some type of an award this week, whether it's the best boss in the world mug or whatever it is. give that man something. But I'm going to go a little bit on the other side of the ball, even though the offense didn't perform well. I'm going to give my gruntle to Frank Gore, 17 carries, 109 yards, 6.4 in average. Didn't get in the end zone, but he also surpassed the 15,000 yard mark for his career, which is incredibly special. Not many men who have played football have done that. And he hasn't done most of those yards in a Bills uniform, but kind of cool that he broke in a Bills uniform. And it wasn't just like he had a 27-yard day. He had a 100-yard day. He really ran well. He doesn't look like he's aged at all in the last 3-4 years, which is incredible. So he gets my game ball, and I wish they would have given him the ball a little bit more because it would have been even more of a gruntled for me. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, anytime he's on the list with Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, and Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
That's it. He's the fourth guy. That's unbelievable.
Unbelievable and super special and pretty cool to have seen it live. And like I said, not just that, but also still had a good game and a very productive part of the team today. I'll start off on this one on the disgruntled. It's going to Josh Allen. For me, even though Zay Jones had his issues, people had some issues. Josh Allen really took, I feel like, the Bills out of the game with the early turnovers and just stalling the offense a number of times. And we won't know if he was going to be able to make up for that like he has in the past because of him leaving the game. But I got to go with what I saw and the snaps that he did play. And there was way more bad than good. And Josh Allen, hands down, gets my disgruntled.
That's the right call. I do want to give a special shout out to the lack of effort from Zay Jones. And that I'm mad at Heath Farwell for letting them outsmart us for a free touchdown. But Josh Allen was bad today. He was way more bad than good, like you said. He deserves the disgruntled, and that he has to be better than that for us to go anywhere this season. And the good part is, this is only game 4, and that it's only his 15th start overall, and we have a lot of positive things going that direction. But he has to be better, and he wasn't today, and you have to hold him accountable for that. And I agree. He was the biggest net negative in anybody on the field today.
Yeah, and I this is just an in the moment, in a vacuum, disgruntled for today. It really doesn't change my view of Josh Allen. It doesn't make me panic about who he's going to become. We went up against a very elite defense, probably the best defense I've ever seen the New England Patriots have, and that's saying something because they've had really fantastic units throughout the year. So he went up against the toughest test of his career, and he failed, and that's okay. Quarterbacks are going to do that. He's a young guy. I want to see how he grows through what he saw and what he did. I would have liked to see him get the rest of the game and see how he progressed within the game itself. But I'm okay with that. Tom Brady also went up against a really good defense, and if we were Pat's show, I would have given him my disgruntled as well. So when you face an elite defense, it's tough to really perform well, but unacceptable performance from Josh Allen, and hopefully it's something that he learns from and continues to build on what was been a pretty good season so far.
Yeah, one of my responses on Twitter was just important perspective on the fact that Josh Allen was terrible today is not the same as Josh Allen is terrible.
Right. Oop, I lost you.
No, just trying to have some perspective and understand that he can learn from this and be able to take that forward and still be okay. But you have to hold him accountable to that. He was terrible today and needs to be better.
And before we go, and we let people know where to find us and stuff, I do just want to mention, if you follow the show, Greg and I have been doing bets every week. We do it on a scale of 1 to 10. We make bets throughout the week. This week,
I don't remember. I thought we weren't doing that anymore.
Yeah, well, I'll pull up last week's episode or Wednesday's episode, and so just for a little bit of jogging your memory here, we can stop soon. I don't know what's the skunk point in this thing, and you can just kind of check to me, but right now I'm up 24-10 after sweeping this week. All threes across the board for me. James White over 4.5 catches. Brown had just 5 catches. You had the 5.5. You had the over. He had exactly 5. Burkhead and Michelle, you had the over 100 yards. I think only Michelle got touches. Burkhead didn't even get any run touches, and he had 63 yards. And then obviously Josh Allen got knocked out early, but I don't think he was on pace for 250 anyway. And you had the over 250. So I went across the board. I might give you some easier bets next week and help you play catch up a little bit.
I don't need your pity. Yeah, this is not my best week for it, but that's okay. It's a long season. We're only at we've got
We do have a long way to go.
So I still have faith. I still have faith.
All right, man. Where can the people find you when you're not driving all around the country?
I was going to say, if you want to find me, I'm near Toledo right now. But no, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Greg Thompson, GregTompsett, and bring some perspective. I've been doing that a lot today. So if you need to be calmed down or walked off the ledge, just write me and I'll help you out.
And you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716. Pretty abrasive if you come at me, so careful coming at me too hard. No, I'm a fun guy. I'll interact with anybody. I had a lot of fun on Twitter today, tweeting out stuff from the game and got a lot of interaction. I just love it. It was actually pretty cool, Greg. We were at a pig roast the other night, last night before the game, and a couple people had talked to me. They came up and they introduced themselves, and I was like, oh, yeah, my name's Aaron. And they're like, wait, are you Aaron Quinn from Cover One Buffalo? And I was like, I am, man. So it was pretty cool to meet some people in real life and feel like people are actually out there listening besides just the guys in the Slack channel. So people are out there listening, which is a pretty cool thing. So keep tuning in. We absolutely love it. If you haven't already done so, head over to cover1.net, sign up for the premium membership. You get access to our premium Slack channel, premium film room. You really get a really good group community that we've built over there. Game day is fantastic. It was probably the biggest disappointment to me not being at my house was missing out on all the Slack channel interactions that go on. I kind of popped in from time to time, but I missed out on the Slack channel today, and that was a big bummer. So if you haven't done it, go over, sign up for the premium membership. It also keeps the Cover One machine rolling. We don't really collect money in any other way besides our premium membership, so it really helps us to continue to get out all this top-notch content that we try to give you each and every week throughout the season. So stay tuned. We got our episode this Wednesday previewing the Titans matchup. This is going to be a big matchup, Greg, another big AFC one. I've been saying all week that while emotionally beating the Patriots would be fantastic, and that's a really cool thing, a nice badge to wear, but this Titans game, in my opinion, the big perspective is a much more important game.
100%. This is a team we're going to be fighting with for a wild card or a playoff spot. This is a game that we need to win, and if we can go into the bye at 4-1, absolutely everyone would have taken that if we told you that before the year. So this could be a huge game. I hope that Josh Allen's back and healthy, but anytime we bring this defense into town, I feel good that we have a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so look forward to all the content coming out, reviewing this game and then previewing the Titans. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, guys, and we will catch you soon. Thanks.